When I stepped out of the taxi onto the hot Las Vegas street, I expected to see my son's smile waiting for me. Instead, I saw silence. The front yard was empty, the house locked, the curtains drawn. And then, a woman in a maid's uniform from next door ran straight at me, her face pale with terror. "Run away before it's too late," she screamed, clutching my arm. "These are terrible people. You don't know what you've walked into. My name is Richard Holston, 58 years old. I spent my life breaking my back at a steel plant in Pittsburgh, just to give my only son, Ethan, a better future. When his mother passed away 10 years ago, I told myself I would endure anything, as long as Ethan lived a good life. Now he lived in a big house in Las Vegas with his wife, Camila, and he'd finally invited me to stay with them. I thought it was a blessing. But as I stood on that empty driveway with this frightened stranger gripping my sleeve, I felt something cold crawl down my spine. I asked her what she meant, but she shook her head, her eyes darting toward Ethan's house like someone afraid of being watched. "You need to leave, sir. Don't trust them. Don't step inside that house. They are not who you think they are." Her voice cracked. She leaned closer, whispering something that made my chest tighten. "Your son, he isn't the man you think he is." My knees nearly buckled. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My son, my boy who I raised alone after his mother's death, the boy who once held my hand crossing the street, what could this woman possibly mean? Before I could demand answers, a car engine roared around the corner. The maid gasped, shoved a piece of paper into my hand, and ran back toward her employer's house. The car pulled into the driveway of my son's house. It was Ethan's sleek black SUV. I froze, the paper trembling in my hand. My son and his wife stepped out, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Dad," Ethan called, his arms wide, his voice too cheerful. "You made it. Welcome to Vegas." And in that moment, standing there with the paper burning in my palm and the maid's warning echoing in my ears, I realized something terrifying. I had just walked into a trap. The slip of paper in my palm felt heavier than any steel beam I had lifted in my working years. My fingers itched to unfold it, but Ethan's arms were already wrapping around me in a hug that felt strangely staged, like he was performing for an audience that wasn't there. "Dad," he said, clapping me on the back, "you look good. I told Camila you'd come." His wife stepped out of the SUV with a smile that never reached her eyes. Camila was younger than Ethan by nearly 10 years, tall and sharp-featured, with a presence that could slice through steel. She kissed me on the cheek but held me at arm's length as if she were afraid of my worn suitcase brushing against her perfect dress. "Richard," she said smoothly, "welcome. We've been waiting." I forced myself to smile, slipping the paper into my pocket before they noticed. My heart thudded. I didn't know what was written on it, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let them see it. The house itself was impressive. 2 stories, beige stucco with wide windows, the kind you'd see in glossy real estate brochures. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and something colder, like chemicals. Camila led me through the entryway. Marble floors gleamed under a chandelier that probably cost more than my old truck back in Pittsburgh. "You'll stay in the guest suite upstairs," she said, her heels clicking as she walked. "Ethan and I made sure it's comfortable for you." Comfortable. The word landed heavy. I thought of my cramped 1-bedroom apartment back home where the heating rattled in the winter. I had imagined my visit here would be a gift, a chance to reconnect with Ethan. Instead, it felt like I was stepping onto a stage, part of a performance I didn't understand. As I set my suitcase down, I caught Ethan watching me. His expression was strange, soft for a second, then shuttered, guarded. "You okay, Dad?" he asked. "Of course," I said quickly. "Just tired from the flight." But the truth was, my chest was tight. The maid's words kept echoing, "Don't trust them. Don't step inside that house." And now I had. That night, after dinner, a meal of grilled salmon and salad where Camila did most of the talking, I finally had a moment alone in the guest room. I pulled the crumpled paper from my pocket, but before opening it, I sat on the bed and let my mind wander backward. I remembered Ethan at 10 years old, sitting at our kitchen table in Pittsburgh, his feet barely touching the floor. His mother, Marie, had been gone only 6 months. I was working double shifts at the steel plant, coming home with my hands raw, my back screaming, but I still tried to cook him dinner, mac and cheese, sometimes scrambled eggs if I had the energy. He had looked up at me then, his eyes bright, and said, "Dad, one day I'll buy you a big house so you never have to work again." That promise had carried me through the hardest years. Every overtime shift, every Christmas I spent alone while Ethan studied or worked, those words kept me alive. And now here I was, sitting in a guest room in his big Las Vegas house, holding a note that threatened to shatter everything. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was hurried, slanted. "You are not safe here. They are using you. Don't let them trap you. Ask about the money. Maria." My breath caught. Maria. Who was Maria? The name was underlined twice, as if to scream its importance. I read it again and again, my head spinning. Ask about the money. What money? I had never had much. My pension was modest, my savings nearly gone for medical bills when I injured my back at work. I had always sent Ethan what little I could during his college years, even selling Marie's jewelry so he wouldn't take out more loans. Why would anyone be after my money now? A knock startled me. I shoved the paper under my pillow just as Ethan stepped inside. "Dad," he said softly, his tone different now, almost urgent. "I hope you're comfortable. Camilla's. She can be intense, but she means well." I nodded, my throat dry. Ethan hesitated, then added, "We'll talk tomorrow. There are things I need to tell you. Just rest tonight." And with that, he closed the door. Sleep didn't come. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan turning lazily above me. Who was Maria? What did she mean by trap? Every creak of the house made me tense. Once, I heard hushed voices downstairs, Camilla's sharp tone cutting through, Ethan's lower voice trying to calm her. At one point, I thought I heard my name. By dawn, I was more exhausted than when I'd arrived. The next morning, Camila was all smiles, serving pancakes as if she'd been born in an old-fashioned diner. Ethan barely touched his plate. His eyes kept darting toward me, then toward his wife. "So, Richard," Camila said, pouring me coffee, "have you thought about your retirement plans? Ethan said you've got a nice pension coming in. Must be a relief after all those years at the plant." The fork nearly slipped from my hand. The maid's warning screamed in my ears, "Ask about the money." I forced a smile. "Oh, it's modest. Barely enough to cover rent and groceries back home." Camilla's smile tightened, just for a split second, before she smoothed it out again. "Well, your family," she said sweetly. "And family looks out for each other." The way she said it made my skin crawl. Ethan cleared his throat, pushing back from the table. "Dad, why don't we take a drive later? Just the two of us. I want to show you the city." Camilla's eyes flickered with something like annoyance, but she didn't object. That afternoon, Ethan drove me down the strip, neon lights flashing even in the daylight. But his hands gripped the steering wheel too tight, and his jaw worked like he was grinding his teeth. Finally, I asked, "What's going on, son? Why did you invite me here?" He glanced at me, then back at the road. "Dad, there are things you don't know. Things I've kept from you because I didn't want to disappoint you." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He pulled the car into a nearly empty parking lot overlooking the desert. The heat shimmered on the horizon. He cut the engine and turned to me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't read. Fear, maybe shame. "Camila, she has plans. Big plans. And she thinks you can help." I swallowed hard. "Help how?" Ethan hesitated, then said words that froze my blood. "She knows about your pension, Dad. She wants us to move it into a joint account. She says it's safer that way. But I don't trust her. And I don't know what to do." The desert stretched silent around us, endless and merciless. My own son was looking at me like a boy again, like he had when he was 10 years old asking me for help with homework. Only now, the stakes were higher, dangerously higher. I gripped the edge of the seat, the maid's warning echoing louder than ever. "Ethan," I whispered, "what has your wife dragged you into?" He opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, a black SUV pulled into the lot, cutting off our escape. And Camila stepped out, her heels crunching on the gravel, her smile colder than the desert night. Camilla's heels struck the pavement with deliberate rhythm, each step echoing across the empty desert lot like the ticking of a clock. She walked toward us slowly, as though she had all the time in the world, her dark sunglasses reflecting the sun. Ethan's grip on the steering wheel tightened until his knuckles turned white. "Well," she said smoothly, pulling off her glasses and tucking them into her purse. "What a surprise! I didn't realize my two favorite men were sneaking off for a secret chat." Her smile was flawless, but her eyes were sharp, cutting straight through us. "Camila," Ethan muttered, his voice strained. "We were just—" "Just what?" she interrupted, sliding her gaze to me. "Convincing your father that I'm some sort of villain?" The silence that followed was suffocating. I wanted to shout at her, to demand what game she was playing, but something about the way she stood there, calm and cold, froze my tongue. Instead, I remembered the paper in my pocket. "Ask about the money." I cleared my throat. "Camila, I don't know what's going on, but if you think you're going to get my pension—" She laughed lightly, but it wasn't joy. It was dismissal. "Oh, Richard, do you really think this is about a pension check? You underestimate me." Her words sliced through the hot air, leaving me stunned. If not the pension, then what? Her laugh triggered something in me, a memory. It was winter in Pittsburgh years ago. Snow piled against the apartment windows, the heating barely working. Ethan was 16, sitting at the kitchen table with college brochures spread before him. His eyes shone with hope, but mine burned with worry. "Dad, look at this one," he said, pointing at a glossy booklet for the University of Michigan. "Their engineering program is top-notch. I could really make something of myself there." I forced a smile, though my heart twisted. Tuition was a mountain I could never climb. My back injury had already limited my hours at the plant. Bills were stacked on the counter like bricks building a wall between us and the future. "I'll make it happen, son," I promised. "Even if I have to sell everything I own." And I did. Marie's wedding ring, her mother's necklace, the small plot of land she left me after she passed. I sold it all so Ethan could take his shot at life. I had never regretted it. Until now, when the woman standing before me in the desert smiled like she owned not just my son, but every sacrifice I had ever made. "Richard," Camila said, leaning against the SUV, "I think you're tired. Vegas can be overwhelming for older people. Why don't you let Ethan and me handle the big decisions? That's what family is for." The condescension in her voice ignited something hot in my chest. "Family," I snapped. "Family is sacrifice. Family is love. It's not manipulation or control. Do you even know what those words mean?" Ethan flinched at my tone, but Camila didn't. She just tilted her head, studying me like I was an insect on a glass slide. "Oh, Richard," she said softly, almost with pity. "You still think you're the center of his world. But times have changed. You gave your life for him, yes, but now it's my turn. And unlike you, I know how to play the game." Ethan's face paled. He opened his mouth as if to protest, but Camila cut him off with a glance so sharp he wilted. That was the moment I realized. She had her claws sunk deep into him. Back at the house, Camila disappeared into her home office, leaving Ethan and me in the kitchen. He sat at the table, head in his hands. "Dad," he whispered, "I don't know how to get out." My chest tightened. "Out of what?" He lifted his head, his eyes red. "Camila has connections. She's tied up with people I can't say no to. Businessmen. Investors. Some of them aren't exactly legal. She says we need your name, your record, your pension, your trustworthiness, to get them to sign off on certain deals." My hands shook. "And you agreed to this?" "I didn't have a choice," he said desperately. "When I married her, I thought she loved me. But now she has leverage. Things I did in college, mistakes I made. She says she'll ruin me if I don't go along." The room seemed to tilt. My son, my boy I raised with every ounce of strength I had, was trapped in a marriage that was more prison than partnership. I thought of Ethan as a boy again, maybe 9 years old, standing in the outfield at his little league game. The ball had come toward him, and he froze, eyes wide. The other kids shouted, the parents groaned. But I cheered louder than anyone, yelling, "You've got it, son!" He missed the catch. The ball rolled past him. The team lost. But when he trudged to the car, head down, I knelt in front of him and said, "Listen to me, Ethan. One mistake doesn't define you. You're my son, and I believe in you. Always." He had smiled then, tears in his eyes. That smile had been my fuel. Now, sitting across from him in a gleaming Las Vegas kitchen, I wondered, when had he stopped believing in himself? That evening, Camila summoned us both into the living room. She poured herself a glass of wine and lounged on the sofa like a queen on her throne. "Richard," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "I've been thinking. You're a smart man. And loyal. That's rare these days. We could use someone like you." My stomach churned. "Use me how?" She leaned forward, her smile widening. "Simple. You move your pension and savings into a trust under our management. In return, you live here, comfortably, without worry. Think of it as joining the family business." "And if I say no?" I asked. Her eyes hardened. "Then you might find Las Vegas less hospitable than you imagined." The threat was clear, sharp as a knife. Ethan stared at the floor, silent. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to shout. Instead, I thought of the maid's note. "Don't let them trap you." I needed to be smart, patient. If I reacted now, I would lose. So I forced a shaky smile and said, "I'll think about it." Camilla's eyes glinted with triumph. "Good. That's all I ask." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling once more. But this time, anger simmered beneath my fear. I thought of Marie, of the promises I made her on her deathbed, that I would protect Ethan, no matter what. I thought of the decades of labor, of bones that still ached from steel beams I lifted long after I should have stopped. And I thought of Camila, smiling in her silk dress, certain she had already won. But she didn't know me. She didn't know what a father could endure. She thought I was just an old man with a pension. She was wrong. As dawn crept through the blinds, I reached for the paper again, tracing the name scrawled at the bottom, Maria. Who was she? How did she know what was happening in this house? And most of all, what else did she know about my son's wife? I made myself a silent vow. Before the week was out, I would find Maria. Because Maria held the key to saving my son. The next morning, I woke with one thought pounding in my mind. Maria. Whoever she was, she had risked everything to warn me. That meant she knew things Ethan wouldn't say and Camila would never admit. While Ethan showered and Camila locked herself in her office for her endless business calls, I slipped out the front door, clutching the note. The desert sun was already blazing. I headed straight to the neighbor's house, the one the maid had run from when she gave me the warning. I knocked. Silence. I knocked again, harder. Finally, the door cracked open. The same maid, dark hair pulled back, her eyes darting nervously, peeked out. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. "If they see you—" "Please," I interrupted. "I just need to know who you are. Why did you warn me? Who is Maria?" She looked behind her shoulder, then back at me. "I am Maria." The floor seemed to vanish beneath me. She pulled me inside quickly, shutting the door. The house was quieter, more modest than Ethan and Camilla's mansion, lived in, not staged. Maria led me into the kitchen and poured a glass of water with shaking hands. "I only came to this country 5 years ago," she whispered. "I work as a housemaid here. I clean, I keep quiet. But sometimes," her voice cracked, "sometimes you see things you cannot ignore." "What things?" I pressed. She glanced at the window nervously. "Your son's wife, Camila, she is not who she pretends. She is connected with men who do terrible things. She invites them to the house, late at night, when your son is gone. They speak of money, of accounts, of disappearances." My blood ran cold. Maria lowered her voice further. "I heard your name. They said, 'The old man is coming. He has money. We will use him, then be rid of him.'" The words struck like a hammer. I gripped the table to keep from collapsing. "And Ethan," I whispered. Maria's eyes softened. "Your son, he is blind. He still believes she loves him. He doesn't see she uses him, the way she uses everyone." I swallowed hard, rage bubbling in my chest. "Why are you helping me?" She hesitated. "Because I once loved someone like your son. A good man. He was ruined by people like her. I will not watch it happen again." Before I could ask more, footsteps creaked upstairs. Maria's face went pale. She shoved a small flash drive into my hand. "Here," she whispered fiercely. I copied documents from her laptop when I was cleaning. Bank accounts, contracts, proof. "Hide it. Use it when the time comes." The sound of a man's cough echoed from upstairs. Maria pushed me toward the door. "Go. Please. If my employer sees you, I'll be fired, or worse. Just remember, you cannot fight her directly. She has power. But truth is stronger, if you are patient." She shoved me out the door before I could answer. I walked back to Ethan's house with the flash drive burning in my pocket. My pulse pounded in my ears. Proof. Finally, something I could use. But patience was key. If I showed my hand too soon, I'd lose. On the walk back, I thought of a different promise, one I made years ago. Marie was lying in a hospital bed, her body frail, her breathing shallow. Cancer had eaten her away in less than a year. She gripped my hand weakly and whispered, "Richard, promise me, protect Ethan. No matter what happens. Protect him from himself if you have to." Tears blurred my vision then, as they did now. "I promise," I had whispered back. That promise had never felt heavier than it did in that moment, standing under the desert sun with proof of Camilla's corruption in my pocket. When I returned, Camila was waiting in the living room. She didn't smile this time. She just stared, her arms crossed, her eyes like knives. "Where were you?" she asked coolly. My throat tightened. "Just walking. Needed some air." Her gaze lingered on me too long, as if weighing the truth. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Careful, Richard. Vegas heat can be dangerous for men your age." The words weren't concern. They were a warning. Ethan walked in then, breaking the tension. "Dad, I was thinking we could check out the Bellagio fountains tonight." "You'll love it." Camilla's smile snapped back in place. "Yes. A family outing. How perfect." Her tone made my stomach twist. She was watching me, testing me. That night, while Ethan and Camilla got ready for dinner, I locked myself in the guest room and plugged the flash drive into my old laptop. Files opened, one after another, bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, wire transfers in millions, shell companies listed under fake names. And then I saw Ethan's name. His signature was on documents tying him to transactions worth more money than I'd ever imagined. My breath caught. Ethan wasn't just Camilla's pawn. He was trapped in her web, his name already poisoned with her corruption. If the authorities ever saw this, he'd go down with her. And she knew it. That was her leash around his neck. My hands trembled. I couldn't let my son drown in her schemes. I had to find a way to free him, without losing him forever. That evening, we went out. Camilla dressed in red silk, Ethan in a crisp shirt. I wore the same blazer I'd owned for 15 years. The Bellagio fountains danced, tourists cheered, but all I saw was the way Camilla's hand tightened on Ethan's arm like a chain. She laughed too loudly at his jokes, spoke too sweetly to me, but her eyes kept darting, measuring me, waiting for a crack. At dinner, she raised her glass. "To family," she said. I forced my lips into a smile, but inside, I vowed, *this ends. She will not destroy my son. *. Her toast dragged me back to another dinner table, 20 years earlier, at a greasy diner after Ethan's high school graduation. He wore his cap and gown proudly, his smile wider than I'd ever seen. "Dad," he said, lifting his soda, "to us. We made it." I had choked up, unable to speak, just nodding with pride. Back then, it had been us against the world. Now, sitting across from him in Las Vegas, it felt like the world had stolen him from me. On the ride back, Camilla leaned closer to me in the SUV. Ethan was driving, his eyes fixed on the road. "Richard," she said softly, her perfume sharp and suffocating, "you're a smart man. I know you see the bigger picture. We could be powerful, all of us together. Why cling to your little pension when millions are within reach?" I turned to her slowly. Because money means nothing if it costs my son his soul. Her smile vanished. For the first time, I saw the mask slip. Her eyes darkened with pure malice. "You'll regret crossing me," she whispered. I didn't reply. But inside, I thought, not if I cross you first. That night, I hid the flash drive deep in my suitcase, beneath layers of clothes. I knew Camila would search eventually. She was the type who always checked. But as I lay awake, I heard her voice downstairs, low and sharp, speaking to someone on the phone. "She suspects nothing," she said. "But the old man, he may be a problem. If he doesn't cooperate, we'll have to handle it." My blood froze. She wasn't just dangerous. She was willing to kill. The moment I heard Camilla's voice downstairs, promising to handle me if I didn't bend, a cold clarity settled over me. I had worked in steel for 30 years. Pressure, heat, and danger had been my daily companions. And if there was one thing I learned from those years, it was this: you never show fear to the fire. You bend carefully, you move wisely, or you break. I couldn't confront Camila head-on. She had power, money, connections I couldn't yet see. But she had one weakness: Ethan. And Ethan was still my son. If I could reach him, pull him back from the edge before she consumed him, then I had a chance. So I made a plan. Not a loud one, not one she could sense. A quiet plan. The next morning, Ethan and I sat on the back patio. The desert stretched endless and golden in the distance. He looked worn, shadows under his eyes. "Son," I said carefully, "you know I'd never judge you. But I need to ask, why stay with her? Why let her pull you into things you don't believe in?" He rubbed his face with both hands. "Dad, you don't get it. I owe her. When I was broke after grad school, she bailed me out. She paid off debts, helped me start my consulting business. I thought it was love. But it came with strings. Every year, the strings got tighter." I leaned forward. "And now it feels like I'm in a cage. But the worst part is, I put myself there." My heart ached. He reminded me of the boy who once came home crying after failing a test, believing he wasn't smart enough. I had sat with him at the kitchen table all night, helping him study until he got it. I wanted to do the same now: sit, teach, rescue. But this was bigger than algebra. This was life and death. "You're not alone," I told him quietly. "You still have me." He looked at me, and for the first time since I arrived, I saw the old Ethan flicker in his eyes. At dinner that night, Camila poured wine with the grace of a queen and asked too casually, "So, Richard, have you given any thought to what we discussed? About the trust?" I cut into my steak slowly, as if weighing her words. "I've been thinking. You're right. Maybe it's time to let family help. But I'd want everything done properly, through a lawyer." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She recovered quickly. "Of course. Lawyers, contracts, whatever makes you comfortable." I sipped my water. "And I'll need time. Big decisions like this don't happen overnight." The edge in her eyes sharpened. She wanted quick compliance, not caution. Good. Let her stew. The longer I dragged it out, the more chances I had to find leverage. The next day, while Camila was out, meeting with investors, I convinced Ethan to drop me at the local library. I told him I wanted to read while he ran errands. Inside, I slipped into a computer booth, plugged in the flash drive, and printed every document Maria had saved. The librarian gave me a curious glance at the thick stack of papers, but I just smiled and tucked them into my jacket. Back in the quiet of the reading room, I pored over them. Shell companies, offshore accounts, false names. But one thing stood out, a signature that wasn't Camila's. It was Ethan's. Dozens of times. His name was tied directly to fraud worth millions. My hands shook. She hadn't just trapped him emotionally, she had made him complicit. If she went down, so would he. For a moment, despair washed over me. But then another thought cut through: signatures could be forged. Or coerced. Ethan's weakness was his trust. Camila knew that. If I could prove his innocence, I could save him. I gathered the papers, slid them into a folder, and left the library with my heart pounding. That evening, Camila was waiting by the front door when I returned. Her smile was brittle. "Out for a stroll again?" she asked. "Library," I said evenly. "Old habits die hard. I like the quiet." Her eyes scanned my jacket. For a heartbeat, I thought she knew. Then she kissed me on the cheek like a daughter-in-law should, only her lips were ice. "Be careful, Richard. This is Las Vegas. People vanish here all the time." Her warning wasn't subtle anymore. Later that night, I wrote a letter in the guest room. I addressed it to a lawyer back in Pittsburgh who had handled Marie's will. I explained everything: Camila, the documents, the danger. I enclosed copies of the papers and sealed the envelope. If something happened to me, someone had to know. I slipped the letter into my suitcase, planning to mail it the next morning. As I lay there, I thought of the years I had sacrificed for Ethan. The cold mornings at the plant, my body breaking while he studied in warm classrooms. The Christmas mornings I worked overtime so he could have gifts under the tree. I hadn't done all that to watch a woman like Camila destroy him. I whispered into the darkness, as if Marie could still hear me, "I won't fail him. Not now. Not ever." The following evening, it happened. I came downstairs to find Ethan pale and shaken. Camila stood in front of him, waving papers in the air, papers I recognized instantly. My stomach dropped. She had found the folder. "You think you can betray me?" she hissed at Ethan. "You and your father, sneaking behind my back?" Ethan stammered. "I didn't, Camila, I swear I didn't know." Her eyes snapped to me, blazing. "This was you. Don't play dumb, Richard. You think you're clever, but you're just an old man out of his depth." I stood my ground, my voice calm. "You're right about one thing. I am old. Old enough to know your type. You can threaten me, but you will not take my son." She laughed, sharp and cruel. "Your son? He's already mine. Look at him. His name is on every document. If I go down, so does he. He's chained to me forever." Ethan looked at me, his face twisted with shame and fear. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy. Then I said, steady and sure, "Chains can be broken." Camilla's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, lowering her voice until it was almost a growl. "Be very careful, Richard. You don't know who you're dealing with. I can ruin you. I can ruin him. Or I can make you both disappear. And in this city, no one will ask questions." She dropped the papers onto the floor between us and walked out, her heels clicking like gunshots. Ethan buried his face in his hands. And I stood there, staring at the documents, knowing the war had begun. The night after Camila confronted us, I barely slept. Her threats replayed in my mind, echoing like hammer strikes in an empty factory. She thought fear would paralyze me. But fear, when channeled, becomes fuel. I had lived through layoffs, through watching my wife waste away from cancer, through holding my newborn son in a freezing apartment with no heat. Fear never stopped me then. It wouldn't stop me now. If Camila wanted a war, she would get one, but on my terms. The next morning, Ethan sat at the kitchen counter, staring into a cold cup of coffee. He looked broken, like a man half his age carrying twice the weight. "Dad," he muttered, "I'm finished. You saw it. My name's all over those papers. If this comes out, I'll lose everything. My business, my reputation, maybe even jail." I pulled the stool beside him. "Listen to me. You are not finished. She forged your signature, or she pushed you into signing things you didn't understand. That's not guilt. That's manipulation. There's a difference." His eyes watered, shame pouring out. "But what if no one believes me? Then I'll make them believe. I've got nothing left to lose, Ethan. She can threaten me all she wants, but I'm not afraid of her. I've already buried the woman I loved. Nothing she can do scares me anymore." For a moment, he looked at me the way he did when he was 12 and I fixed the engine of his first bike. Like I was the only man in the world who could save him. That look gave me the fire I needed. I knew I couldn't fight Camila alone. People like her operated in shadows, protected by money and influence. If I went to the police with what I had, she'd twist the story, paint me as a bitter old man interfering in his son's marriage. I needed allies, people who weren't afraid of her. That afternoon, I visited Maria, the housemaid who had first warned me. She lived in a small rental on the edge of town, modest and quiet, nothing like the palace Camila flaunted. When she opened the door, her eyes widened in surprise. "Señor Richard, you shouldn't be here. If they see—" "I don't care," I interrupted gently. "I need your help. You saw things. You know what she is." Her hands trembled on the doorframe. Finally, she stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled of beans and warm bread, a reminder of simpler times. Over tea, she spoke in hushed tones. "Camila deals with dangerous people. Men in suits come late at night. Sometimes they argue, sometimes they laugh, but always money changes hands. She has accounts under fake names. And Ethan," Maria's eyes softened. "He doesn't know. He's blind because he loves her." I nodded. "I have documents. Proof. But I need more, witnesses, patterns, anything that shows Ethan was trapped." She bit her lip, then went to a drawer and pulled out a small notebook. "I write everything down. Dates, names, times. For my protection. Maybe it can help you too." I took the notebook with shaking hands. "Maria, you may have just given me the weapon I need." On my way back, I stopped at a quiet post office and mailed the letter I had prepared days earlier, with Maria's notebook copied and enclosed. I sent it to my old lawyer in Pittsburgh, a man I trusted with my life. If something happened to me, the truth would not die with me. As the envelope disappeared through the slot, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time since arriving in Vegas, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was fighting back. But Camila sensed something. That evening, she hosted a dinner party. Wealthy men and women filled the house, laughing too loudly, clinking glasses of champagne. I sat in the corner, invisible, observing. Halfway through the evening, Camila raised her glass and, with a smile as sharp as broken glass, said, "To family, those who stand by us and those who betray us." Her eyes found mine across the table. The guests laughed, oblivious, but I caught the venom in her tone. She was warning me. She knew I was moving against her. Ethan shifted uncomfortably beside her, caught between us. I leaned back, meeting her gaze without flinching. If she wanted a game, I'd play it. But I wouldn't blink first. Later that night, after the guests had left, Ethan knocked on my door. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "She told me, Dad," he whispered. "She said if I don't convince you to sign the trust papers, she'll ruin us both. She said she has recordings, documents, everything. I don't know what's real anymore. I feel like I'm drowning." I gripped his shoulders. "Listen to me. This is exactly how she controls you, with fear. But we have something stronger, the truth. And I swear to you, Ethan, I will get you out of this, even if it costs me everything." He collapsed into my arms, sobbing like the boy I once carried on my shoulders through county fairs. For the first time in years, he let me hold him. And in that moment, I knew, Camila might own his marriage, his signature, even his money. But she did not own his soul. Not while I was alive. Over the next week, I worked quietly. I scanned Maria's notebook, sent copies to my lawyer, and even slipped one into a safe deposit box at a local bank. I started watching Camila's routines. She met different men at odd hours, sometimes leaving with briefcases, sometimes returning with jewelry she hadn't bought. I noted everything. At the same time, I began gently feeding Ethan the strength he'd lost. We went on walks in the desert, just the two of us. I reminded him of his childhood, of his mother's love, of the man he used to be. Slowly, I saw him stand a little taller, speak a little firmer. Camila noticed. Her smiles grew tighter, her tone sharper. The harder she pressed, the more Ethan resisted. And that terrified her. One night, while Camila was gone, Ethan confessed something that chilled me. "Dad, I think she's into something worse than fraud. I think she launders money through casinos. A guy I once met, a gambler named Victor, hinted that she owes dangerous people. If they don't get paid, they'll come after her. And maybe me too." The puzzle pieces snapped together. Camila wasn't just greedy, she was desperate. That made her more dangerous, but also more reckless. Desperate people make mistakes. "Then we'll use that," I told him. We'll let her dig her own grave. The breakthrough came 2 nights later. Camila came home furious, slamming doors, muttering about idiot partners and missing money. I stayed hidden in the kitchen as she stormed into her office, phone pressed to her ear. I slipped closer, heart pounding, and pressed my own phone's recorder on. I don't care what it takes, she hissed. If Ethan doesn't sign the final transfer, I'll ruin him myself. His name is on everything. The feds will eat him alive while I walk free. Do you understand me? Click. That was it. The rope she had tied around Ethan's neck had become the noose around her own. The next morning, I showed Ethan the recording. His face went pale, then hardened with something I hadn't seen in years, resolve. She was willing to sacrifice me, he whispered. All this time, I thought she loved me, but she was just using me as her shield. I nodded. Now you see her for who she really is. And now, son, we fight. But before we could plan our next step, the front door burst open. Camila walked in, flanked by 2 men in dark suits I hadn't seen before. Her smile was venom. Going somewhere, boys? The men closed the door behind them. Ethan froze. My blood turned to ice. She knew. She knew everything. Camila crossed the room slowly, her heels echoing against the marble floor. I told you once, Richard, she said softly, almost sweetly. In this city, people vanish without a trace. And today, one of you will. The men stepped forward. And I realized, with terrifying clarity, that the war was no longer quiet. It was here, in our faces, and it was life or death. The moment Camilla's men stepped into the living room, the air grew heavy, suffocating. They weren't here to talk. Their cold eyes, their stiff suits, the way their hands hovered near their jackets, these were men accustomed to ending problems, not negotiating them. Ethan's shoulders tensed beside me. He looked like a boy cornered in an alley, but I knew deep down my son wasn't weak. He'd just forgotten how to fight. Tonight, he'd remember. Camila sat elegantly on the couch, crossing her legs as though she were presiding over a board meeting instead of an execution. Richard, she began, her voice dripping with sugar and poison, you've been busy, digging where you don't belong, turning my husband against me, recording things you shouldn't hear. She leaned forward, her smile sharp. Here's your choice. Sign over control of your estate tonight, or my friends here make sure you disappear before dawn. Ethan will sign too. Either way, this ends tonight. Ethan's voice cracked. Camila, please. You don't have to do this. Oh, sweetheart, she purred. I already have. The men shifted closer. I stood, meeting her gaze. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. You want my estate? Take it. Money never meant a damn thing to me. But you're not dragging Ethan down with you. He's done. He's out. She laughed coldly. You think you're in a position to bargain? I slipped my phone from my pocket, thumb hovering over the screen. Actually, yes. Because this, I tapped the phone, is already backed up and sent to people who will know what to do if I vanish. The recording of you threatening to frame Ethan. The documents from Maria. Your entire empire of lies. Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, and I knew I had struck a nerve. You're bluffing, she hissed. Try me. One of the men stepped forward, his hand brushing the inside of his jacket. Ethan instinctively moved between us, his chest rising and falling like he was about to break apart. Don't touch him, Ethan snapped. Not my father. Something shifted in him then. The fear cracked, and underneath it was steel I hadn't seen in years. Camilla's smile faltered. Ethan, darling, you don't understand. No, he cut her off. His voice shook but carried force. I understand too well. You used me. Every signature, every lie, it was never about us. It was about power. And I was too blind to see it. But not anymore. He turned to the men. You think you're protecting her? She'll throw you under the bus the second you're inconvenient. That's what she does. The men glanced at each other, hesitation flickering. Doubt. Camilla's mask slipped, panic creeping at the edges. Enough, she snapped. Do it. Now. The taller man reached for his jacket, but I lunged first, slamming the side table into his arm. The gun clattered to the floor. Ethan dove, kicking it out of reach. The second man grabbed me by the collar, his fist colliding with my ribs. Pain exploded through me, but I refused to fall. I'd taken worse hits in the factory. With a roar, I swung back, catching him across the jaw. Ethan tackled the first man, both of them crashing into the coffee table. Glass shattered, blood smeared across the marble. Through the chaos, Camila screamed, "Useless idiots! Finish it!" The fight was brutal, messy, nothing like movies. But adrenaline carried us. Ethan fought with a fury I hadn't seen since he was a boy standing up to bullies. Every punch he threw wasn't just at the man in front of him, it was at years of manipulation, at his own shame, at the chains Camila had wrapped around his neck. We overpowered them at last, both men groaning on the floor. My chest burned, my hands shook, but we were standing. Together. Camila stared at us, her face pale, her perfect composure cracking. "You think you've won? You're fools. I'll call the police. I'll say you broke in, attacked me." "Do it," I interrupted. "Because the second you make that call, my lawyer releases everything. Your empire burns." Ethan stood beside me, blood on his lip but fire in his eyes. "It's over, Camila. You don't own me anymore." For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. But it quickly twisted into rage. She snatched the gun from the floor, her hands trembling but steady enough to aim. "No one walks away from me," she hissed. "Not you, Ethan. And certainly not your pathetic father." Ethan froze. My body went cold. "Camila," I said slowly, "if you pull that trigger, you prove everything I've recorded. You'll have nowhere to run." "I don't care," she screamed. Tears streaked her mascara. "If I can't control you, I'll destroy you." The barrel shook, inches from Ethan's chest. Before I could move, the front door burst open. Maria stood there, breathless, clutching a phone. Behind her, 2 uniformed officers pushed inside, guns drawn. "Drop it," one shouted. Camila spun, caught between targets. Her face twisted with rage and disbelief. "Maria, you traitor." Maria's voice trembled but didn't break. "I told you. Someone had to stop you." The officers advanced, their guns steady. "Drop the weapon, ma'am." "No." For a heartbeat, I thought she might surrender. But Camila wasn't built for surrender. With a scream, she turned the gun back toward Ethan. And that's when the shot rang out. The sound was deafening, echoing through the mansion. Ethan stumbled backward, his eyes wide, blood staining his shirt. "Ethan!" I screamed, rushing to him. Camilla's gun clattered to the floor as the officers restrained her, her shrieks fading into the distance. But all I could see was my son, crumpling into my arms, his breath ragged, his blood warm against my hands. "Dad!" he whispered, his voice fading. And in that moment, I didn't know if I was holding on to him, or losing him forever. Blood. That's all I could see. Hot, sticky, pulsing between my fingers as I pressed against Ethan's chest. His eyes fluttered, his breaths shallow. "Stay with me, son," I begged, my voice breaking. "Don't you leave me. Not now, not like this." The officers shouted commands, restraining Camila as she cursed and screamed like a cornered animal. Maria knelt beside me, her hands trembling as she pressed a towel against the wound. "He's strong," she whispered, though her voice shook. "He can make it." I wanted to believe her. I had to believe her. Minutes blurred into sirens and flashing lights. EMTs rushed in, lifting Ethan onto a stretcher. His face was pale, lips blue. "Are you his father?" one asked. "Yes," I choked out. "Then ride with us." I climbed into the ambulance, never letting go of his hand. As the doors slammed shut and the siren wailed, I whispered stories to him. The fishing trip when he was 10, the time he scraped his knee and swore he'd never ride a bike again, the night his mother sang him to sleep. "Remember, Ethan," I said, tears streaking down my face. "You always got back up. You always fought. Fight now, son. Please." At the hospital, they wheeled him into surgery. Hours crawled by in a sterile waiting room that smelled of bleach and fear. I paced, my body aching, my soul burning. Maria sat silently, rosary beads in her hands, whispering prayers. I clung to her presence like a lifeline. Finally, a surgeon emerged, his mask pulled down, his face tired but calm. "He lost a lot of blood," he said. "But you got him here in time. The bullet missed his heart by an inch. He'll recover." Relief slammed into me so hard my knees buckled. I sank into a chair, covering my face with my hands. For the first time in days, I let myself breathe. The next morning, detectives came. They had Camila in custody. The evidence, the recording, Maria's notebook, the documents, painted a picture too clear to ignore. Fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. But the nail in her coffin was the attempted shooting, witnessed by police. She would never see freedom again. "Your testimony will be important," one detective told me. "But with what we have, she's finished." I nodded, though there was no triumph in me. Only exhaustion. Ethan spent weeks in the hospital. I barely left his side. Sometimes he woke in pain, sometimes in guilt, whispering, "I'm sorry, Dad. I should have listened. I should have seen." Each time, I held his hand. "No. Don't waste breath on sorry. Just heal. That's all I want." Slowly, color returned to his face. His voice grew stronger. The doctors said he would walk out of there. And when he did, I swore it would be into a different life. A free life. Months later, I sat in a courtroom, watching Camila in chains. Gone was the queen of Las Vegas, the woman who wielded power like a weapon. She looked small now, her designer clothes traded for prison orange. She sneered at me once, but I didn't flinch. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Ethan squeezed my hand. Tears filled his eyes, not for her, but for the years he had lost to her poison. "It's over," he whispered. I shook my head gently. "No, son. It's beginning." Ethan sold the Vegas house, paid off what debts he could, and moved back to Pittsburgh. He started over, this time with honesty and humility. I helped him piece his life back together, step by step. There were scars, yes, emotional and physical, but there was also freedom. One crisp autumn evening, we stood outside my modest home, the same house where I had raised him. The air smelled of leaves and wood smoke. "Dad," he said, his voice thick, "I don't deserve you. After everything." I cut him off. "You're my son. That's all that matters. I'd walk through fire for you. And in case you didn't notice, I just did." He laughed, shaky but real, and for the first time in years, I saw light in his eyes. Maria stayed in Las Vegas, but not as a maid. With Camila gone, she testified, received protection, and began building a new life. We kept in touch through letters. She called me her brother in faith, the one who gave her courage to finally speak. Her notebook, the little weapon of truth she carried, became evidence that toppled not just Camila, but the network she was tied to. Months later, Ethan asked me to walk with him to the cemetery. We stood before Marie's grave, the woman who had loved us both fiercely. Ethan knelt, tears sliding down his face. "Mom, I almost lost everything. But Dad saved me. He never stopped fighting for me, even when I didn't deserve it." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "She already knows, son. She always knew." The wind rustled the trees, and for a moment, I swore I could feel her there, proud of us both. I'm an old man now, closer to the end than the beginning. But when I look at Ethan, rebuilding his life, I don't feel old, I feel alive. Because I did what a father is meant to do: protect, guide, and never give up. Camila thought she could break me with fear. She thought she could chain Ethan forever. But chains can be broken. Fear can be turned into fire. And love endures. As I sit on the porch in the quiet Pittsburgh evening, Ethan beside me, I think back to that night in Las Vegas when Maria screamed for me to run away before it was too late. I didn't run. I fought. And in the end, I won, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with the quiet strength of a father who refused to let go. Ethan leaned back, watching the sunset. "You know, Dad," he said softly, "for the first time in years, I feel free." I smiled, my heart full. "That's all I ever wanted for you, son." The sky burned orange and gold, and I knew, whatever years I had left, they were enough. Because my son was safe, the truth had prevailed, and the love of a father had triumphed over the darkness. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.